And a big claim by Sri Lankan MP Namal Rajapaksa, who said that it's been brought to our notice that another Iranian vessel is in Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone just outside territorial waters and has sought the government's permission to make an urgent port call. This comes after the Iranian warship was struck in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Sri Lanka. And now news of a second Iranian warship just outside of Sri Lankan waters, which has been confirmed by Sri Lanka with this, statement coming in from the Sri Lankan MP Rajapaksa. It has been brought to our notice that another Iranian vessel is in Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone just outside our territorial waters, has sought the government's permission to make an urgent port call. However, it is yet awaiting the government's clearance. So let's go back to Aditya for more on this, and Vishnu also coming in. First to you, Aditya, it seems another Iranian ship in distress.
Well, yes, the Iranian ship is in fact in the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka and has made urgent distress call, and there seems to be a request that has gone out for a port call. That means they expect an imminent threat to them in the region, and that's why they want to make an immediate port call. It is likely that there is an urgent meeting now underway. I've spoken to the spokesperson of the Sri Lankan Navy, who is in an urgent meeting right now with top defense officials taking a call on whether to allow the port call or not, or what are the SOPs that the Sri Lankan Navy will now do. So this is a confirmation coming in from top government sources in Sri Lanka as well that this has indeed happened just 24 hours after an Iranian frigate was in fact attacked by the US submarine, and more than 87 people were killed, 32 of them critically injured. Now there is a second Iranian ship that has been seen in the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka and has made an urgent request for a port call. Of course, Vishnu can explain the more technical details of what really happens here because of the distress that they are in. And of course, they would be expecting another possible attack from the US submarine. And the Sri Lankan Navy has said that they are taking SOPs in place and they are doing whatever is possible at this stage.
All right, Aditya, they're reporting from Tel Aviv. Let's go across to Vishnu now for more. And Vishnu, so far Sri Lanka has remained neutral, has called for peace in the face of this conflict. But now a second ship in trouble and a distress call being made to Sri Lanka.
Well, if a distress call has been made, if there is an urgent request from this ship to actually dock in a Sri Lankan port, and Sri Lanka chooses to accede to this request, then they are no longer a neutral party over here. That said, there is a humanitarian issue as well. If these sailors believe that their lives are under threat, then Sri Lanka is obliged also under any number of international guidelines to allow them to dock and ensure that they are protected and ensure that they are safe. Now, whether or not this particular ship is in the range of a US warship or submarine like the previous ship was, we do not know at this stage, and we do not have an exact fix of its location. But it is a difficult situation because the Iranian Navy doesn't compare at all with a massive US fast attack nuclear submarine of the class which the US has deployed in the Indian Ocean, or for that matter any American frigate or destroyer which is operating in the region. That being the case, it's a very difficult and it's a very sort of sensitive situation. If these sailors and officers on this particular ship are not allowed permission to dock, then they are essentially out on their own and they would be vulnerable to attack by the submarine. Even though this is a warship, it doesn't have at all the long-range towed array, towed sonar systems, or state-of-the-art acoustic decoys, or a multiple host of sensors, perhaps from other platforms, to help it track a potential submarine in its area. Also important to remember that the waters of the Indian Ocean are such that because of thermoclines and temperatures, it's very difficult to actually track a submarine in these waters. It's something our Navy faces on a daily basis. It's very, very difficult. On the other hand, a submarine which is extremely advanced and having detected a particular warship on the surface has every chance of being able to target it.
That's right. And Vishnu, this comes just after, the Iris Dena was destroyed. Over 80 Iranian soldiers killed in that submarine attack. Also, we're awaiting the Indian government to make some kind of a statement. And in this time comes the news of this second ship in distress. You spoke about, the rules and, it does seem the rules of engagement so far, all sorts of red lines have been clearly crossed in this ever since this conflict began.
Well, one of the rules which exists in the Geneva Convention is that if a submarine has attacked and sunk a particular warship, then the crew of that submarine are obliged to reach out and rescue survivors. But that's clearly been violated at one level. On the other hand, the US would not want to reveal the position of their submarine, and this particular Iranian vessel was, it is considered a fair operation because Iran and America are at war. We can talk about rules, but this is war that's taking place. It does leave India, I would suggest, in a somewhat awkward situation because that ship, the first one, which was sunk by an American submarine, was actually at the International Fleet Review called Milan of Visakhapatnam as a guest of India when it was then moving back into its own waters. But whether they were our guests or whatever it was, the Americans chose to engage and destroy them.
Right, and briefly, Vishnu, before we let you go, if Sri Lanka does allow the ship to dock, at this point, again, as you said, the rules of engagement, etc., all crossed, don't seem to be in place. What would it mean for Sri Lanka? How would that perhaps be viewed by the US or by Israel? And Sri Lanka has good ties with Israel.
Well, it's very difficult to understand how, the United States would attack if there is an Iranian vessel which docks in a Sri Lankan port. Hypothetically speaking, what stops the United States from targeting that particular ship, since they are targeting Iranian vessels and have a stated policy which they are of sinking the Iranian Navy completely. So this is something that they're going to have to watch out for. Whether it's possible to transfer all of the ships and sailors from an Iranian vessel onto other boats and bring them to Sri Lanka, leaving that ship out there. But this is a navy, it is a warship, these are the threats that they face. So in a situation like this, there is every possibility that no matter what the conditions are, the Iranians will have to face whatever threats that do exist over there.